few weeks ago, I was looking at some books that I've had for years but I've never read, and I found one that caught my attention. And I read the book, and I was fascinated by what I read. It was about a subject, a person, I should say. It was a biography of a person that I had heard about for years and I knew about, but I had no idea of the details of his life. This, by the way, is the book I'm referring to. It's called Sandow the Magnificent. It's written by David Chapman. This is the first edition. I actually bought this back in the 90s, brand new. Since then, he's published a upgraded edition or a revised edition. I haven't read the revised edition, but I doubt if it's much different than this one. There's a couple of details which I'll talk about in this video that that had changed since the publication of this first book. But the subject of the book, a man named Eugene Sandow, was an absolutely fascinating character. I mean, you hear the term "father of bodybuilding" tossed around a lot. A lot of people anoint themselves the father of bodybuilding. The most common person that name is applied to is Joe Weider. Now, I worked for Joe Weider for years, for about 20 years. I wrote for his magazines. I was the science editor of Muscle and Fitness. I also was an associate editor of Flex magazine. I knew Joe Weider very well. Now, I'll say this much for Joe Weider. Joe Weider probably did more than anyone else to popularize bodybuilding and publicize it. He's the one who was responsible for bringing Arnold Schwarzenegger over from Europe, and he did more than probably anyone else to popularize bodybuilding through his magazines. But he is not the father of bodybuilding. That appellation definitely goes to Eugene Sandow. Now, most people are not, unless you're familiar with the history of bodybuilding, most people have no idea who Eugene Sandow is. He was around a long, long time ago. Eugene Sandow, the only familiarity a lot of people have with Eugene Sandow is when they hand out the trophy at the Mr. Olympia contest each year. It's a small statuette based on Eugene Sandow. In fact, it's called the Sandow. And that was designed by a sculptor named Frederick Pomeroy. And the original Eugene Sandow statues were actually given out by Eugene Sandow himself at the very first international bodybuilding contest, which was held in 1901 in London. And Eugene Sandow promoted that contest, and he handed out these same statuettes. He gave a gold one, a bronze one, and a silver one. For first, second, and third place. I guess the first place would be the gold, the second place would be the silver, and the third place would be the bronze. Now, just to compete in that first contest, again, it was held in 1901. Standing room only. He was very, very popular, immensely popular. Eugene Sandow was a very savvy businessman. That's one of the things people don't realize about Eugene Sandow. He was a very smart, savvy businessman. Besides being probably the best built man of his generation, there was other strongmen bodybuilders followed him, and some of them were very muscular, but none of them ever achieved the fame of Eugene Sandow. But Eugene Sandow was the archetype. He was the one that led the way to the other ones. Now, Eugene Sandow, to publicize that first bodybuilding contest in 1901, he held a series of small contests throughout England, that's where he was living. This contest again was held in London, and the local winners. I think he held this for a year or two before the actual contest. He had to take it started in the late 1890s, but he had to take a break around 1899, if I remember correctly, because England was fighting in something called the Boer War in South Africa. So he had meant to hold the contest around 1899 or so, but he had to put it off to until 1901 because of this war that Britain was carrying on in South Africa. And to his credit, Eugene Sandow donated the proceeds of that first bodybuilding contest to the veterans who were hurt or injured fighting in that Boer War. he was a very generous guy, Eugene Sandow. Now, a little bit about his background. Eugene Sandow was born in was what was called Prussia in April 1867. Prussia no longer exists, but Prussia would be where Germany and Poland are today. In fact, the actual town that Eugene Sandow was born in is actually a town now in Russia. Prussia also included parts of what's today Lithuania. Eugene Sandow was a very typical of many bodybuilders. Started out very small and frail, and on one occasion he visited a museum where they had statues of, like, the Greek gods and stuff, and Hercules and all that. And he was very impressed by this, Eugene, especially because he looked at his own frail body. And nobody believed at that time, that anybody could be built like those statues. They thought the statues were idealized portrayals of these mythical heroes, that nobody could have muscles like that. But for some reason, little Eugene Sandow didn't believe that. So what he did is he embarked on a program of gymnastics initially to try and build a little muscle, and then he progressed to from gymnastics. He progressed to using weights, and he got to be the age where they had a draft, and to draft people into the army in Prussia, and rather Eugene Sandow was a draft dodger. Let's call it what it was. Eugene Sandow left Prussia, and he went to the Netherlands, and he was already pretty strong by this time after working out for a couple of years. He was pretty well built, young man. What he went on, they had these gripping machines where you put like a penny or dime or whatever it was back then in these gripping machines, and you'd grip the machine, and it would, they'd have a little scale on there to show you how strong you are. Anyway, Eugene Sandow, to get publicity, he wanted to be a professional strongman. There was no bodybuilders back then. Bodybuilding didn't exist. The closest to bodybuilding were professional strongmen who appeared at circuses, and they appeared sometimes on stage, and they do feats of strength. Most of them didn't have much of a physique. They were kind of big, burly guys. Like, for example, Louis Cyr from Canada was tremendously strong, probably one of the strongest men who ever lived. He was a big, heavy guy, though. He looked more like a later strong guy named Paul Anderson, who was a U.S. Olympic champion in 1956. But it was very rare to see a strong man who also had a physique, and that's what made Sandow stood out. But anyway, he went around to get publicity for himself. He wanted to appear in the circus. He wanted to, be a strong man. So he went around the Netherlands there, and these grip machines, he broke them. He was so strong. He'd pop a penny in, whatever it cost. He'd break the machines. And he kept doing this all over town. The cops caught up with him. And apparently it engendered some publicity. And he wound up appearing at some sort of circus thing where he performed stage stunts. So he did a weird way of kind of a unique way of breaking in. That's what he did. Like I say, he became first interested in bodybuilding when he was 10 years old, visiting Italy, and he saw those statues in a museum. So after the Netherlands, he joined the circus. He managed to get into the circus as a strongman, where he went under the tutorship of a guy named Ludwig Derlicher, who was known as Professor Attila. Now, Professor Attila noticed that Sandow not only had a fantastic physique for his day, nobody looked like Sandow. You have to understand, there was no men who looked like Sandow. He was like a freak of nature back then. But plus the fact that he was uncommonly strong, the Derlicher or Professor Attila suggested he started entering strongman competitions. So he did that, and he was matched against local strongmen, a couple of them like Charles Sampson, Frank Biankowski, Henry McCann. Nobody remembers these guys, but these guys were strongmen, And and he beat them all. Some of these guys were a lot bigger than Sandow. So you have to understand, Sandow. I've looked online and I've seen various measurements of Sandow. Some some of them say he had 19-inch arms, which would have been crap. That would have been unbelievable for a guy in the late 19th century to have almost 20-inch arms at 19. The truth of the matter is that Sandow's arms were measured by a professor at Harvard when he came to the United States. He took measurements of Sandow. Sandow actually had 17.5-inch arms. He did, some of the things said he had a 60-inch chest. He had a 46-inch chest, which isn't bad. As far as his height goes, some people I've seen, some of them say he was as short as 5. Wikipedia lists him as only 5'5", but Sandow himself said that he was 5'7.5". So I think I'd go with what Sandow says. So he wasn't a big man, but he packed a lot of strength in that small structure. Like I say, he left Prussia in 1885 to avoid military service, and he traveled throughout Europe. He became a circus athlete, and he changed his name. His original name was Frederick Wilhelm Müller. That was his name he was born with, and he changed the name to Eugene Sandow. Not sure why, but it's discussed in this book, but I don't remember exactly why. I guess the theory is that he took Eugene Sandow as a stage name because he had a Russian mother. Her maiden name was Sandov, Sandov. So he Germanized his mother's name to Sandow. So that's how he became Eugene Sandow. Now, Eugene Sandow's reputation grew because he was unique. Because again, they had a lot of. This was the age of vaudeville and stuff. They had a lot of strongmen who could do some incredible feats. But again, Sandow stood out because of his physique. He would do his strongman act, and then he would go to his dressing room and charge people. You won't believe this. He would charge people $300 to feel his muscle, and this includes men and women. One woman supposedly went backstage, and I don't know whether she paid or whether Sandow let her feel his muscles for free. In any case, she fainted. Sandow flexed his arm. She felt his arm and actually passed out. She was so startled. She had never seen anything like that. But Sandow's fame really grew. When he came to the United States, he met a famous showman of the early 20th century named Florence Ziegfeld. Again, people who are into history might have heard of Ziegfeld's Follies, which was a big Broadway production in the early 20th century. And what happened was he met Ziegfeld, and Ziegfeld decided to bring Sandow to the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, and he put Sandow under. Sandow had already had a contract with somebody else, Sandow wanted a weekly salary of $1,000, which is equivalent to $35,000 today. But Ziegfeld couldn't match that, but he agreed to pay 10% of the gross receipts of the shows that he put on at the Columbian Exposition. Ziegfeld noticed that the audience at the Columbian Exposition was much more fascinated by Ziegfeld's muscles or his physique than by any amount of weight he was lifting. So he had Sandow move in poses, which he dubbed muscle display performances. So Ziegfeld would pose in between lifting weights. And one of the things he did, he did a chain lift where he stood on a platform. He had a chain apparatus around his neck that went all the way down to the ground, had this big thing of concrete, and he was able to lift the concrete block, which weighed 4,800 pounds. That's amazing. I doubt if even today's modern strongmen could duplicate something like that. Some of the other, what was I going to say? He was able to do. He would do exercises like doing curls with 56 pounds in each hand while doing flips back and forth. So, so much for bodybuilders being stiff. I mean, he was an amazing guy. If you look at the movie Pumping Iron, at the beginning of the movie, there's an old film of Sandow posing. At the end of his posing routine, he does a backflip and then crosses his arms over his chest. That was Eugene Sandow. At the Columbian Exposition, Sandow's act caught the attention of Thomas Edison, the famous inventor. And Thomas Edison brought him back to New Jersey, and he made 3 short films of Sandow posing. That film that you see in Pumping Iron, that was one of Sandow's films of Eugene Sandow. Eugene Sandow also posed for a statue that was in the British Museum. It was actually made a life statue of Sandow, where he had to hold a pose, flexing his muscles full force for up to 15 minutes at a time. Now, if you don't think that's hard, try doing that. Try flexing your arm for 15 minutes and holding it full flex. That alone was an amazing feat. When he was on tour in the United States, he returned briefly to England, where he met a woman named Blanche Brooks, who lived in Manchester. He married her, and they had 2 daughters. So then he got a little sick after that, but he recovered, and he opened what he called his Institute of Physical Culture, where he taught exercise, diet tips, and weight training. And his ideas of exercise were revolutionary. Some of the exercises he introduced are still in use today, that he introduced, and his gym was fabulous. I mean, it didn't look like a gym. It didn't look like this kind of, nothing place. It was like a palace. It had fantastic upholstery and upholstery, carpets. It looked more like a museum. Then he started, if that wasn't enough, he started, by the way, he had men and women train, which is also revolutionary. He had a separate women's gym for women who wanted to train. And remember, in those days, women did not work out. I mean, and yet Sandow encouraged women to train. He told them what it could do for them. So in his Institute of Physical Culture, he had a separate gym for women who didn't feel comfortable training around men. And then in 1898, he started his own magazine. It was called Physical Culture, and later it was called Sandow's Magazine of Physical Culture. So he was one of the first guys to start a bodybuilding magazine. And then he published a series of exercise books between 1897 and 1904. And the last book in 1904 was where the word bodybuilding was first used. That's where the word bodybuilding first came from. So, like I say, that first contest in 1901 held in London's Royal Albert Hall, it was so full of people that people had to be turned away at the door. That's how popular it was. There was 3 judges. One of them was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was the author of the Sherlock Holmes novels. He happened to also be what was then known as a physical culturist. They didn't call it bodybuilding back then. Eugene Sandow actually trained Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes book. I'm sorry, Sherlock Holmes books. As far as also another first by Eugene Sandow was he was the first. During his visit to India, and he went on these world tours all the time. And one of his tours in India in 1905, he was already famous. He actually noticed the people doing yoga, and he went back and introduced yoga as a form of exercise. So that's another first for Eugene Sandow. Now, the thing is that Eugene Sandow, there's a lot of stories about him. For one thing, that they say is that him and his wife, he went on these world tours all the time, And his wife by that time had two young girls, the daughters, and she was a little pissed off at Eugene Sandow, and she grew more bitter as time went on. And she also suspected him. He was very close with a guy named Martinez Siverking, who was a famous classical pianist who used to travel with Eugene Sandow on these world tours. Now, he would accompany, when Sandow would pose, this guy, Martinez, would play the piano, but there were rumors that they were more than just friends. But that was never proven. But I can tell you that Eugene Sandow was very popular with women, and he seemed to really like women. Some of the most famous women in the world, were admirers of his, and there's stories about that too. I'm not going to get into here. But then you have the story about how he died. He was 58 years old. This was in 1925. He drove his car. He had these big touring cars that he was really into. The car supposedly, drove into a ditch, and he tried to lift it out himself. And the story is that it was so much effort involved. These cars were very heavy that he strained himself and gave himself a stroke, which led to his death at age 58. Now, when he died, he was buried in an unmarked grave. Now, his wife did that. His wife was so angry at him, and again, why she was never disclosed, because she refused to talk about it. She refused to say, but the theory is that she was angry at him because he spent so little time with her going around the world. He was kind of a narcissist. Let's put the cards on the table. He was. He loved the admiration. It's kind of an early version of Arnold. He had the German accent just like Arnold, and this and that. He would flirt with women everywhere he went. So, his wife was pissed off. So when he died, he was buried in a Putney Vale cemetery. No unmarked grave. And, this was very, very horrible thing to do to a guy like Eugene Sandow, who was so world famous. In 2002, a gravestone and black marble plaque was added by a Sandow admirer, and then later on the grave was purchased by Sandow's great-grandson, and now it's just a simple kind of reddish pink sandstone monolith, and all it says on it is Sandow, and that's his final, with his birth dates 1867 to 1925, so. The thing about Sandow is that, let me see, what else did I want to say about him? Well, as far as his workout routine, Sandow, he sold equipment too. Sandow actually invented rubber chest expander for working out, sold that. He had an equipment company, he had a magazine, he had the gyms. This guy was a true entrepreneur, way ahead of his time. He was making a ton of money at the height of his popularity. And he used to sell these 5-pound dumbbells, and he used to say that's what gave him his physique, lifting light dumbbells. He credited his physique with lifting, and he later on invented this 5-pound dumbbell that came with a spring inside it, something like when you gripped it at with a certain amount of force, a little bell would go off, indicating that you were using enough grip strength or something like that. As far as his actual routine go, he liked to do a lot of one-hand lifts. That was the popular lifts of the Strongman. They used to like to do a lot of one-hand lifts. He did swing lifts, such as a swing, ring, and bow lift. He did lunges for legs. He did full sit-ups, forearm exercises. He did a lot of dumbbell barbell exercise. He did lateral bicep curls, standing chest flies, barbell raises. He did side raises for deltoids and all that. Not much different than things, today. But I forgot one thing that's kind of important. Sandow was the first bodybuilder to endorse food supplements. He endorsed a cocoa product. It was called Sandow's Cocoa, something like that. I got the name wrong. That's not the exact name. And then later on, he came out with his own product. And this is mind-blowing when you think about it. His product that he came out and he said would help men build muscle and women was actually a whey product. It was a kind of a coarse whey product. It was a kind of a biscuit that contained whey. This was the very first whey protein supplement, and it was sold in the early 1900s. To say that Sandow was ahead of his time would be putting it mildly. So, so I did this video because I think that it's kind of sad that Sandow's kind of a forgotten man. I mean, he deserves much more admiration than he gets, and perhaps maybe some of you younger people watching this, hopefully you'll get more appreciation. You could go online and look at, there's a lot of photos of Sandow online posing, and he is the true father of bodybuilding. If there's anyone who was the father of bodybuilding, it's Eugene Sandow, and every bodybuilder who walks the earth today owes a debt of gratitude to Eugene Sandow, the man who started it all. If you want more information on nutrition, exercise science, anti-aging research, ergogenic aids, hormone therapy, supplement science, which supplements work, which ones don't, women's health and fitness, I cover more topics in Applied Metabolics than any other digital publication, and Applied Metabolics is the only publication that includes my 62 years of constant study and experience and knowledge I've garnered over the years. I've made mistakes in my bodybuilding activity, and I could tell you what to do to avoid the mistakes I made. It's only in Applied Metabolics that you'll find this. And I also tell a lot of stories about my days of training at the original Gold's Gym with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the top bodybuilders of the so-called golden age of bodybuilding of the 1970s. It's all in Applied Metabolics. You won't find it anywhere else. There's a lot of good publications out there related to nutrition and exercise. I'm not going to say they're bad, but most of them are far more expensive than Applied Metabolics. I have not raised my subscription price for Applied Metabolics since I started it back in 1914. Now I sound like Eugene Sandow. 2014. I keep the price low because I think it's a very important publication for people to read, because it's 100% truth. There's no BS. I don't mislead. I don't try and sell you anything. I think it's very important. It's a huge asset to personal trainers for continued education, medical doctors, anybody who's interested in fitness and health. It should really be subscribing to Applied Metabolics. If I say so myself, it comes out once a month. It's anywhere from 30 to 40 pages. And it's at www.appliedmetabolics.com. So subscribe today. When you subscribe, send me an email, and I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where each day I post new information on exercise, nutrition, and general health. I also have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics webpage where current subscribers only could send me short questions about anything they read in Applied Metabolics or anything that they're curious about related to nutrition, exercise, and I will answer their questions in appreciation of their subscription. You can look at it as a kind of a bonus to subscribing to Applied Metabolics. And what else can I say? If you like my videos, if you think they're of any use, please subscribe to this channel. It's free. It doesn't cost a penny. I post new videos every Tuesday. I also, if you have any ideas for future videos, feel free to leave them in the comments section. If I feel that the topic that you suggest would interest a large number of people, I will be happy to do an informational video on it. Again, it will be non-commercialized, unlike 99.9% of the videos on YouTube. Hey, look, I'm not saying all these YouTube videos are bad, don't get me wrong. But speaking for myself, I find it grating when you're listening to an informational video where where the guy or the woman is giving you information, and suddenly it breaks into this commercial about whey protein or some sort of makeup or crap. I mean, to me, it's like being slapped in the head. I mean, I hate that. And as soon as it happens, I turn them off. But that's me. I'm not saying you should do that. But the good thing about my videos is you'll notice there's no commercials. So subscribe today if you're really to this channel and to my Applied Metabolics if you want real, true, accurate information. If you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. They're fantastic. I'm going to get one soon. I'm having a little bit certain problems now where I can't get the dog right now, but I will get a dog shortly. And when I do, I'll bring him into my video and introduce him to all of you. Take care and thanks for listening.